In our last video, we saw how we can make use of the build pipeline with classical and with YAML. And today we are going to be looking at even further the way that we can use this build pipeline in terms of the continuous integration and making use of the variables and stuffs. So if you remember in our previous videos, we were using this build configuration and the build platform and all these variables within our artifacts that we created. And again, you can keep on adding any number of pipeline variables here, and you can also define your own variables. And there are some predefined variables that you can see from here, which is available in the document, like what are the different kinds of variables that you can use. The one which we are using is the agent.build directory, which is nothing but this one, the C:agent work. And this is the exact same build directory that we used while we were creating the UI test path. And similarly, there is a build.artifact staging directory, which is this one, and the build ID, build numbers, and you can see that there are so many different variables that you can use, which is the predefined variable which you can use within your test build steps that you are using. And similarly, this triggers is something very, very important, and this is where the continuous integration happens. For instance, if you enable this continuous integrations, and if you're gonna make any changes to the master branch or all the branches, you can do that as well. So for instance, if I'm going to change anything in the master branch, then I'm going to trigger the build. So this is where you can set this particular stuff. And similarly, if you want to schedule the build, you can do that, or you can also set up a build trigger for this Udemy course project. Once anything happens within this particular branch, which is nothing but the master branch. So you can do that as well for the continuous integration. And similarly, you can see there are some options where you can define the build number format. So basically, whatever build that we create right now has this particular format right now, but you can change the build format if you want. You can give a description, and also you can say that while the new build request is being processed, you can just enable it so that you can queue and start the new build in the available agent or the eligible agents, or you can just set this as passed so that it won't be executed or the build won't start at all. And you can even disable this if you want. And similarly, you can automatically link this new work in this particular build, and you can also include a wildcard of the branch specification. And if you're going to give a status batch, if you remember we discussed about this already, you can do that as well. So you can do all sort of jazz here in the options. Similarly, if you're going to do a retention, you can do that retention as well. So currently the retention has been streamlined, but if you want to go into the project setting, you can configure that. Again, it's kind of very, very deep. I don't really have to go into that yet, but you can go ahead and play around with it, like how it works. Similarly, you can see the history of what is been happening for that particular build pipeline that we created. So basically we just added this guy only one time, so that's why there is only one history here. There is not big history changes that we can see. So I'm just gonna save this for now, and I'm not going to be triggering any of the build yet here. So you can see that the build is currently not running at all. But if I go to the files in my repo, and currently this is in the test branch, but if I change this to maybe a master branch, and if I'm, let's say, gonna go to the Selenium test here, and I'm just gonna hit the edit, and I'm gonna make a few change here. Maybe I'm just gonna add a comment here. I'm just gonna commit this change, updated test one, which is fine. And now once I go to the pipeline of the build, and if I go to the Udemy course project, you can see that the build has been triggered, which is nothing but the CI build. So basically, this is not manual build. This is the continuous integration build for our build trigger that we have set. So now you can see that it is automatically being triggered. I did not did anything here manually. Rather, once I made any changes to the master branch, because that's what we set in the build trigger basically, it automatically triggered the build and it is running that build for us automatically. So this is how we can see that we can set a trigger for the build, and we can see that the build is automatically executing for that particular trigger. So this is what is the continuous integration of the build which is happening within our Azure pipeline. So you can see that the board, the repos, and the pipelines within the pipeline, the build is all tightly integrated here, guys. It's all coupled together much cohesively so that it can do the execution for us without any monitoring by us to perform these operations. So everything is happening for us without any problem, and that's the power of the continuous integration in Azure DevOps Service. Starting our next video, we'll see how we can make use of the release pipeline, and we can create a new release here, and also we will see how we can deploy the code in our local Internet Information Server, and then we can run the Selenium test. Also, we'll understand the concept of the deployment groups, how we can create the shared groups, something like this, and then how we can run the test across different machines and different groups or different deployment groups in much efficient manner.